So I wake up and I reach down to my left knee because I'm expecting that my left knee is going to be fixed, right? I'm like, okay, I've been waiting for weeks now. I'm like trying to get this thing fixed. There's nothing on my left knee.
Welcome to the Tip the Skills podcast, where we discuss running and growing your law firm. I'm your host, Maria Monroy, president and co-founder of LawRank. Today, I am joined by Robbie Munoz. And wow, this was a really good episode, I'm not gonna lie. We talked about how he got into law, which is something that I usually wouldn't ask a guest, but he promised me that the story was worthwhile. And he recently had a verdict of $161 million. And there is a full circle moment that ties how he got into law to this case. The whole story is amazing, but I had no idea that I was going to enjoy it this much. So I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. Welcome to the Tip the Skills podcast.
I'm so happy to be here.
You seem very happy, although you were just shit-talking me a minute ago.
But that's kind of what we do.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I've been a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah. Oh,
Let's look that way.
What was your first episode that you listened to? What's your favorite episode?
Oh, wow. You're hitting me with the hard-hitting questions right now. I've listened to so many.
You're
because
such a liar. You haven't heard
They're
any
all
of them.
so good.
Okay, start. Go. And I'm going to pick it apart. So once you tell me the episode, I'm going to ask you questions about the episode.
Sure. I think...
And please don't mention anyone from your firm.
I have to. But number one, I got to start with my guys. So
Okay.
Bob's, Sevy's, Grayson's, all great.
Yeah, but we just discussed how they were all on before, so that doesn't count.
That definitely
Give me one that
counts.
isn't in your firm.
There's been so many. It's
You're
hard to
such
pick
a
my favorite. There's just so many good ones.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell us your name. And
Robbie Munoz.
Nice. And where do you work?
I work at the Simon Law Group.
No way.
Can you believe it?
I thought I was like capped out on how many people I could have from the Simon Law Group.
We've got a whole gang. We've got many more.
I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. You keep telling me offline that you have this amazing story that everyone.
Okay, I thought you knew this story.
I don't know the story.
Okay, all right. So the story about how I got into law.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Well, or we can talk about your most embarrassing dating stories.
We should probably save that for later. Okay. We'll warm up to the dating story.
We had some of those last night.
We did. We broke bread. We talked about most embarrassing stories ever in life.
And I couldn't think of one.
You haven't thought of one today?
No, I haven't been able to.
You still haven't come up with one?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
There's like some trauma there.
Well, you also said it's because you didn't understand what was going on.
What do you mean?
You said you didn't understand the language, so how would you know?
Oh, maybe, right.
Right?
But that was like a year. But after that,
You caught
6, 7.
You fully caught on to English in 1 year?
Yeah.
What program were you using?
None.
No?
Well, there was Inglés sin Barreras, but
Rosetta Stone?
no. You don't remember Inglés sin Barreras?
No.
Did you not watch TV in Spanish?
The novellas?
Well, yeah. That.
Yeah. Esmeralda? Do you remember Esmeralda?
I don't.
Oh, that was like my jam.
In Spanish?
Yeah.
Do you
of
speak
course.
Spanish?
Yeah, un poco.
Can we do the interview in
En
Spanish?
todo en la conversación en español? Ooh.
Yeah, you have an accent.
It'd be tough.
Yeah.
It'd be
Okay.
tough. Okay.
How you got into law?
All right. So you said don't be long-winded, so this might be challenging.
Okay.
So my story begins, I grew up boxing. So a lot of people don't know that. I was an amateur boxer, and I trained preparing for the Olympics, right? The goal was to go to the Olympics in 2008. It had some fights leading up to, so it was February of 2008. So literally like we just had the anniversary. Preparing for the Olympics, preparing in boxing, running one night, and I hurt my left knee. And I remember thinking like, oh shit, this is not good. This feels very abnormal, right? Like very strong pain. So I eventually connected an orthopedic surgeon, and this orthopedic tells me, I can get you in there for surgery. I can have you back out there in no time. You're going to be, back preparing for the Olympic trials in a blink of an eye. I'm like, all right, great. Let's do this. I remember my family was very worried, like very concerned. Like, you never had surgery before, maybe not a good idea. But I was very focused on having this surgery. So we end up scheduling the surgery. It's supposed to be like an arthroscopic surgery. They can go in and fix my left knee. doctor, pulls me aside, says everything's going to be fine. Just pretend like you're going to sleep in Hawaii, and when you wake up, it'll all be over. So go through the surgery. I wake up after. This is like the short version because I don't want to be too long-winded.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Most people are, and then
no, I'm going to try to keep it shorter.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My producer
and the whole team.
It.
The whole team.
Yeah. Rudy, she's falling asleep over there.
Okay, well, it's about to get good. Here it comes. So I wake up and I reach down to my left knee because I'm expecting that my left knee is going to be fixed, right? I'm like, okay, I've been waiting for weeks now. I'm like trying to get this thing fixed. There's nothing on my left knee.
What do you mean?
There's nothing. There's no wrap. There's no gauze. There's no ice. There's nothing.
Oh my God.
But I feel a throbbing on my right side.
I knew you were going to fucking say that.
So when I reach over to my right side, my right knee is wrapped up in ice, and the doctor would operate on the right knee instead of the left knee.
What a fucking moron.
And it changed my life forever. So I think that's a pretty good story.
I have a lot of questions. Hold on.
Yeah.
So then what happened? Were you like, excuse me, like...
Well, so I remember originally being like, because I'm just coming to from being under anesthesia, right? So it's like kind of a weird space to be in mentally. And I remember thinking like, am I in a dream? Like, what's happening right now? This is very strange. And then when it finally hit me, I was really angry first because I was expecting to go back and start training again. I wanted to go back into boxing and fighting and trying to prepare for the Olympic trials. So I was really angry. There's a lot of anger. And I remember the nurse came in, like, she ended up being a really nice woman. And
so you first told the nurse, like, hey,
yeah, she was the first person I saw.
So he didn't figure it out at all? Like, even when he got in there?
Eventually. Oh, no. So everyone always asks that question. Like, how come he got in there and he didn't know? So there's just like natural wear and tear, and just started pulling stuff out of my good knee. And yeah, I remember telling the nurse, like, you guys operate on the wrong fucking knee.
And did the doctor come in?
Eventually.
And what the fuck did he say?
No excuse. I mean, there's no excuse, right? What can you say in a situation like that?
So did it fuck up your right knee?
Yes. So my right knee is still, I have like an issue with my kneecap, and like my right knee my whole right leg really never fully recovered, which is kind of crazy because we're 16 years removed. I've, worked this thing out. I've gone to the gym. I've tried to build it back, but it'll shake, and the atrophy. I never came back from the atrophy.
I'm so sorry. This must have been so traumatic. And
it was a little traumatic.
So then there was no point in even trying to fix the left.
Yeah. So at that point, the doctor told me that my right leg atrophied more than if I would have had an ACL tear. So by the time like my window closed, like the Olympic trials, all that came to an end.
So did you hire, I know medical malpractice is tough in California, but it is, right? Tough in California?
It is tough.
But you
really can't lose this case.
No, so what happened? Who did you hire? Oh my God.
So I hired 2 attorneys that represented me in California.
Who are they?
Probably, I don't think that you know either of them. Dan Hodes and Sean Burke. They represented me jointly. And so that's what opened up my eyes to law. I'd never had any experience with law before. I'd never met I'm sure I'd met attorneys, but I didn't have any attorneys in my family. I don't come from this family with like judges or anything like that. I was represented by these 2 attorneys, and they opened up my eyes to what law can do for people that are harmed. And through that process, I just became more and more passionate about it. And I knew this is what I wanted to do.
It killed one dream, but started another one.
Kind of, yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it was like maybe meant to be.
I've always had a hard time saying that because I feel like it was such a colossal failure that it's a weird thing to say, like, it's meant to be or it should have happened. So I don't think that, but I'm a firm believer in taking the challenges and the punches we don't see coming in life to go, the boxing route.
Yeah.
To take the punches we don't see coming and to try to turn those into the best things possible. So I'm all about silver linings. I'm all about, okay, how can I take this challenge, allow it to make me better, right? What can I glean from this? What can I gain from this experience to make me a better version of myself? So that's what I ran with.
That's awesome. So at that point, did you already have a college degree?
No, at that point I was still going through undergraduate. So I hadn't hadn't completed my college degree yet. I remember, I had my deposition and I had mediation. I remember getting so sick from my mediation because I was so overwhelmed by the stress of this whole process. And now when I talk to clients, that's really helpful because I can
so empathetic.
100%. I can tell them like I've been, in something similar to this. I will say, for anyone of the 5 people that listen to this, because
and so 4 if we deduct you.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
There's one lesson that Grayson Goody has taught me many things, but Grayson taught me one really important lesson early on, and that was when we were talking about my situation and how to connect to clients. And he said, I want to try to help you tweak something. And it's not about you understanding what they are going through or what they've gone through, your clients, because you're never going to know what your clients have gone through. You have an experience that's similar that allows you to connect to them, but don't say you know what your clients are going through. So I'm always really mindful of not saying like, oh, I've got an experience that was just like, my client, right? Because I don't know. I have no idea what my clients are going through. I have an idea of what I went through and it's similar. And it helps inform kind of the way that I connect to clients, but ultimately.
That's a really cool story. It lived up to it.
Yeah, I told you.
You did good.
I told you.
But you know what you should listen to? I think you would enjoy this. Huberman. Have you listened to Huberman before?
I love Huberman.
Did you listen to the one about forming your identity?
I don't think I've listened to that one.
You should listen to it. It's going to resonate. So he has a woman on that used to be a violinist, I think. And like she went to like Juilliard and was like, and then she had an injury.
Oh, wow.
And she couldn't play anymore. And like the loss of identity, because her whole identity was tied to this.
Tied to that instrument.
Overnight was gone, right? So she talks a lot about like reshaping your identity after like such a huge loss, and what the things should be that we tie our identity to, and not so much like I'm a lawyer or but like what is it about being a lawyer, that feeling that it creates, that is like what you enjoy.
Just to take that a step further, I think that like if there's one thing that I can take away from this experience and what I went through, it's empathy and being able to connect to not only my clients, but so on that note, right? Like I think it's far more important to apply it to our lives in general. So for me, it's not about just being empathetic with a potential client or my clients, it's about being empathetic with everyone that I meet, right? If I can share empathy and get to know people genuinely, I just feel like how much better does that make life?
And you are very empathetic after hearing your dating stories yesterday.
Wow.
Like
I didn't think we were going to go there. I thought we were saving that for the after hours session.
We can cut this part if you want.
Yeah.
It's too funny though.
Yeah.
You are like super nice.
I think it's important. So, I mean, I think that there's something to be said about taking those experiences, taking those challenges in life and allowing them to make you a better version of yourself. But also, like you said, like don't let that be your full identity. I'm not Robbie Munoz, the wrong knee operation guy, right? Like many people have forgotten that story. Frankly, it's 16 years ago, February 15th, 2008. So that's not who I am. But I've taken that experience and I think that I've allowed it to create some new layers to who I am as a human being. And I think that as trial attorneys and as plaintiff attorneys, that has to be a practice that we're in, right? We have to constantly try to find whatever experiences allow us to connect to our clients.
I love that.
Because if you can do that and you can connect that to the jury, that's where things start to get really special.
That's amazing. That was a really neat story.
Thank
you for sharing that.
You're very welcome.
Let's talk about your big verdict.
My big verdict. Okay.
How much was it?
It was a $161 million verdict.
That's amazing.
It was quite an experience. I think that the empathy and that all of the stuff that we just talked about was so important in that process. Before we get to the verdict, I'll talk to you a little bit about how I got there. I got connected to the Simon Law Group through an internship. I never, thought this was going to be a full-time position. I was in a summer internship program that rotated me among 3 different firms. And the second stop was SLG. And I remember thinking, I don't ever want to leave this place. It was just like a party almost. My first day, I remember they were like cutting cake and literally serving cake for someone's birthday. And then Bob says, get out to the beach. We're going to play softball. And I'm like, this is not like the last firm I just came from. So in my first 10 minutes, I remember thinking like, this is where I want to be. And then I remember Bob making fun of me because I had like jeans and a collared shirt on. And he's like, why are you wearing that? And I'm like, because I was trying to be casual because I knew SLG was more casual.
So that was you being casual.
That was me trying to be more casual. And Bob's like, don't wear that tomorrow. And then the next day we played softball on the beach again. And I remember thinking like, this is, we don't play softball on the beach as much anymore, but it was just an opening to like, this is a very different culture. Totally different.
Yeah.
So Bob offered me a clerkship after that summer stop. And I remember thinking like, okay, it's going to be awesome, right? There's so much to learn. He put me into 2 trials as a 3L in law school. He let me try 2 cases. I would leave my lectures in law school and I'd go back and forth between the courthouse and my lecture halls.
And did your classmates think that was nuts?
Everyone thought it was crazy because it was. I mean, in hindsight, like it was kind of nuts. I was like giving an opening statement and then going to like business law in the afternoon or whatever it was. So I think we had like.
Wait, how did they go though?
I won both.
Really?
I won both. Yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm actually super proud of my very first verdict. It was a rear end auto crash and it was a recommendation for cervical injections, cervical epidural injections. They didn't even happen. The injections hadn't even happened yet. My client had only had chiropractic therapy with a recommendation to have an injection. And I tried that. I remember, I gave the opening statement. I did opening, closing. I put on probably 4 or 5 witnesses, their expert. And I think our verdict was like $86,000.
That's really cool.
And I remember being so bummed because this is at a time where, SLG, every verdict was like 5 million, 6 million, 4 million, 8 million, like constant huge verdicts. And I hit an $86,000 verdict. I remember thinking like 86,000. Like,
but what was the offer?
I think it was a like $5,000 offer or something.
Okay.
But it ended up like.
And what were the expectations? Was the expectation that you'd get 5 million? There's no way they were going to let you try that.
No. I think that they would have been happy with like 25,000.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
but just in that moment, being so young and like wanting to try to compete with these guys that are having all these, at that point, like Jenny and Sienna and Grayson and Sev, like there was constant big verdicts coming in. So I remember thinking like, well, 86,000 doesn't sound that sexy. But looking back, I'm very proud of that.
No, that's really cool.
I'm very proud of that.
But wait, you weren't even a lawyer. I'm so confused.
I was a 3L. And then in my winter break, Bob sent me up to Tulare. Tulare up in like Central California.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried another case. And that was like $140,000 verdict.
This is like the craziest one.
I know.
This is crazy.
I had 2 verdicts before I graduated from law school. And I probably would have had a couple more, but then COVID hit. I don't think a law student has 2 verdicts in California. I don't think it's been. I mean, so, there's probably like crim.
Doesn't he do that?
Yeah, I mean, Bob's always about putting people in positions.
Did he only do that with you, or has he done that with other clerks?
I think there was one other clerk that had done it, but I think I was the first to do it twice.
Okay.
And then we had like 2 more lined up for the spring semester, and then COVID hit, 2020.
So when that happened, was Bob like, hey, you're good, like you're going to be good?
No, there wasn't anything like that. I think that it was more of like, I just want you to keep getting in the batter's box, keep getting reps, keep getting a chance to grow. Because it's not like Bob was going to Tulare to watch me, try a case in the middle of.
But he must have figured at that point.
I'll say this, and Grayson said this in his podcast with you. So just to prove that I've listened,
or maybe it was a clip on social media that you watched.
It doesn't matter. The point is, I was really paying attention.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember Grayson talking about how really the whole Simon group, the whole family, and Bob, for me, was that first person. Brandon brought me into the firm. Brandon gave me a chance to actually work there. And then Bob was like, he was the one giving me these chances to go swing. And that's one thing that SLG, I think, is so much better than anyone else at, which is giving people opportunities to step outside their comfort zone and really making them believe like, you can do this, right? This isn't just some fairy tale. Like you can do this. And I think having that confidence from Bob and the whole team, you feel like, all right, I can go run through a wall right now. Like, let's go do this. So doing it the first time and then having some success and then doing it the second time, I think it laid some foundation there. But then the world stopped. I mean, I was locked up, we were all like, COVID hit. So all of that kind of got a little bit undone. And I remember my first trial back after COVID, it was like I was starting all over again. But I think there were even more nerves going into that third trial because everyone had been locked away. The world was in such a weird place.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I still think it's crazy that like how many lawyers wouldn't even let like a baby lawyer go try a case. Like he let you try a case as a law student.
My 3
You hadn't even passed the bar.
You hadn't
even graduated.
I hadn't even started studying for the bar yet.
It's crazy. I'm going to call him after this.
Yeah. It's a pretty good story.
We'll FaceTime him. This is crazy.
We will have to, yeah. I had 2 verdicts coming out of COVID, and then the Suzuki case came.
Okay, let's talk about it.
All right, let's talk about it.
I don't know anything about it.
You don't know anything about the Suzuki case?
Nothing.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So,
you're in for another good story.
Good, let's
2
hear
for the
it.
price of 1.
Yeah.
All right, so Suzuki is really, it's a full circle moment for me and for our co-counsel and my trial partner, Gabe Houston. I worked with Gabe back when I was a clerk at one of the med mal firms that represented me for my wrong.
No.
Yeah. So I worked with Gabe and I remember him giving me this huge stack of documents and they were like all in Japanese. Some of them were translated.
Do you speak Japanese?
No. So I didn't really dig too deeply into those ones. But the other ones, he's like, I need you to go through and I need you to look if you see anything. I can't remember the exact term that he was looking for, but I'm assuming it was like brake failure. And we'll get there in a second. So I was looking through thousands of pages of documents. Okay. And then eventually Gabe left that firm. I went to law school and we kind of, went our separate ways, still stayed in touch. And Gabe took this Suzuki case with him when he left the firm.
Why were you looking at documents though?
I was just doing just document review, trying to find evidence that he could eventually use.
But you were at this point in time,
I was a clerk.
You were a clerk.
I wasn't even in law school. Yeah, at a firm that he was a associate at.
Okay.
So,
and he had this case, then he leaves the firm.
Takes the case with him.
Okay.
Okay, and then is working up this case, eventually partners with the Simon Law Group, and they join forces and they try this case together. So he tries the case the first time with someone who used to work at SLG, and I would go watch. So I was in law school at the time. And I'd break away from class and I'd go take like a pen and paper. I'd take notes and I'd watch Gabe, in trial. I watched his closing. And I remember even meeting with jurors after this trial. And I had notes that I created. And I had a Word document that I saved in my iCloud that was like Soulier jury notes or something. Okay.
But this is a different case.
No, it's the same case.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
We're getting there.
All right.
So they win this case all in. It's like, I think it was 8.9 million or 9 million. And then with, I think, cost and interest, it was like 10 or 11 million dollars. A good verdict.
Yeah.
Right. A really good verdict.
Of course.
So Suzuki appeals the case. The basis of the case is a front brake master cylinder that fails. Okay. And when that front brake master cylinder fails, it's in the use of motorcycles. And so riders are trying to pull this handle to utilize that brake. That front brake doesn't work. And there's crashes and crashes and crashes. So our client was one of those riders who went to go pull that brake and there was no feedback, not the feedback he was expecting. And he ends up crashing and suffering a really horrific leg injury. So they try the case the first time, they win it, Suzuki appeals it. They win technically on one portion of the appeal, but the appellate court grants a new trial. So they have to try it a second time. So fast forward, that's 2018, 19. So fast forward to 2023. Yeah, 2023. I got my years mixed up. So beginning of 2023, Gabe Houston, who brought the case to Simon Law Group and, who's been working this case up and who was my trial partner, calls me and tells me a little bit about this. And I already knew what he was talking about because I'd worked on this case with him back in the day, right? And I'd watched him do his closing argument. And he just is kind of lightly poking at like my interest in potentially working with him on this case. And at this point, I've tried, 4 or 5 cases. I'm not like, I don't have 15, 20 trials under my belt. And I tell him, I'll do it. Like, you tell me you want me to do this with you and I'll jump in head first. And I remember telling him, I don't have the experience that Bob has. I don't have the experience that Grayson has. But if you give me an opportunity to try this case, I will pour everything into this and I will not let you down. Right? I will put every ounce of my being and my energy into this and I'll give it everything I have. And I remember him saying like, okay. So Bob let me try this case with him. The firm decided that they'd let me try this case with him. I handled all of damages.
Wait, but I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is someone that you're friends with?
Yep.
Okay. And you met him when you had...
I was clerking for the firm that represented me in my wrong knee operation.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when he decides to bring this case and partner up with the Simon Law Group, was this for the appeal?
No, this was before the first trial.
Okay. So
it's always been a team effort. Both trial 1 and trial 2 were with Gabe Houston and the Simon Law Group.
Okay. But trial 1, you at that point...
I was in law school.
You were in law school. Yeah. But had you already clerked for the Simon Law Group?
No. I hadn't even started clerking yet.
Is that how you met them?
No. I mean, I had
Wow, so there's a lot of synergy here.
This is what I'm saying. Like, this was a full circle moment. I hadn't even started clerking for Simon Law Group. I started clerking with them the summer after that.
Okay. So then you had watched this trial. Now, how did you, you've kind of explained it, but at this point, it was just because you and Gabe were talking about this and that you were like, I should.
So the timeline can get kind of confusing to listeners, right? But let me lay it out. So before the first trial, I'm in law school. I have no affiliation to the Simon Law Group. I'm just there to support Gabe Houston. He happens to be working on it with the Simon Law Group. They go get this great verdict together. I then, a year later, connect to the Simon Law Group through an internship, which then became me staying with them and now being an attorney at the Simon Law Group. About 2 years after that, this case gets through the whole appellate process. I'm now an attorney at the Simon Law Group, and they have to retry it. They have to try it a second time. So that's where Gabe says, hey, what would your interest be in doing this with me? And now that's why I say it's full circle.
So then you go and you pitch this to Bob.
So they had already talked about it and he'd already had the green light. And he was like, I just want to see how you feel about this.
But they didn't expect 161.
I don't think anybody expected 161.
Okay, so now let's get to that.
Yeah.
So now you go and you're part of this team.
Yep.
And what happens?
I dive head first. It's Gabe and I talking every day. Travis Davis, a partner at my firm, was hugely important in the evidentiary issues and making sure that I understood what we needed to get done. So it was a whole team effort, right? It was Travis, it was Gabe, it was myself. We were the trial team. We start preparing. I remember I was like obsessed. Like my parents, my brother, they were dropping food off to my front doorstep because I didn't even want to take breaks. Like it was more intense than studying for the bar. Like I was stuck to a desk trying to learn everything that I could. And I had the responsibility to bring the client's story to life. So Gabe gave me all of damages. So we split, I had damages, he had liability. I think I put on like 8 or 9 witnesses in trial, including the client. So I had to get his story out there. And I really spent so much time with this client. And I'm a huge fan of Joey's. I think I'll always stay a friend to him and connected to him. But we would just go out for lunch. Like, and I tell him, I don't want to talk about the case. Like, let's just talk about life. Like, let's just tell me like how you got to where you're at. And I really tried to get to know this guy and really understand where he came from, what made him tick, what his passions were, who were the people closest to him in his life. And then I started putting those pieces together. And then I started to meet those people and I started to get their stories. And I think we just did such a great job of connecting his story to the jurors. I think that we did a really wonderful job of taking damages to just a different level. And we put on all of the damages witnesses before him, right? So we had his sister, we had his mom, his brother, his girlfriend, and they all spoke about him before. So this, by the time he gets up there on the stand, the jury is like, we're ready to meet Joey Souliere. Like, we want to meet this guy. And it was so powerful. It was so powerful.
And what did you guys do differently? And maybe this is part of it from the first trial versus the second trial.
I mean, Gabe had liability down and he knew it so well. There's nobody in the country that knew it better than him or that knows it better than him, frankly. So that really wasn't, I don't think, I mean, he was masterful with it. And I think that he picked apart their experts and did an incredible job when it was his time. But I think that was always the case. I think that happened in the first trial, which is why they had success in that first trial. I think the second trial was really about us trying to show who Joey Souliere was and why a jury should root for this guy. Because once you heard his story, there was really, I mean, it was incredible. That the way the jury kind of just embraced him and really rooted for him and got around him throughout that trial. You could see it. I mean, they just connected to him. And he's just such a genuine human being. I mean, you're either like, he's going to be honest with you, he's going to tell you how it is, and they love that about him.
I have another question.
Yeah.
What about all the notes you had taken from the first?
Oh, yes, that's a good question. So when I first find out that I'm trying this case, I something goes off in my head. I'm like, holy shit, I've got these notes that I saved. And to me, it's like, okay, like, did that happen for a reason?
But see, that's what
Maybe
I'm telling you.
Okay, maybe that happened for a reason.
I think the whole thing happened for a reason. Like, you couldn't have helped Joey if you hadn't had the surgery.
You're right. I mean, there's some truth to that. There is some truth to that, for sure. So,
and the whole thing is like, it was also like an issue with his leg.
Yeah, I know.
This is crazy.
And we talked about that. And I remember the first time Gabe introduced me to him, I didn't say anything about my leg for like the almost 2 hours I was with him. And then Gabe said, hey, I'm going to, he's like, I'm going to tell you something right now. He's like, Robbie's not going to tell you this. Maybe eventually he will, but I know that he's not going to bring this up right now. So I'm going to tell you for him. And he told Joey about my wrong knee operation. And I remember Joey being like, holy shit, like, I can't believe that. And we instantly had this connection. So there is truth to that. But I pull this document and I'm looking through all of my notes, and we ended up using like 2 of these notes were so important for us in the second trial. And I wrote that jurors in the first trial, they did not like that there wasn't enough clarity in explaining the difference between compensatory damages, the underlying damages for the client, and then punitive damages. They felt like when they awarded the first verdict in the first trial, because there's 2 phases, right? You have that first underlying case, then you have like a mini second trial for punitive damages.
And is it the same, excuse my ignorance, same jurors?
Same jurors, right? So that can be confusing if you're not really from jury selection all the way through. Every opportunity you have to explain, we're coming twice, right? We're going to be asking 2 different times for 2 separate things.
Wait, and I have a question regarding that. When you do that, when you have to ask 2 different times, do you say to them, forget about the first time, forget about the money that's already been awarded? Can you say that?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to really differentiate between the 2 because they're very different asks.
Well,
they're
also,
completely different.
Okay, but hold on. But also because I feel like intuitive as a human, it's almost hard to forget that it's like, well, maybe this is worth, independently, it's worth X, but let's subtract what we already gave them. Like, I feel like just intuitively as a human, you can't erase what's already there. So like, how do you maneuver? We dealt with one issue.
Yeah.
We're done with that.
Right.
This is a different issue.
That didn't happen in the first trial.
And did it happen in the second?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you mean.
I pulled those notes.
That was a difference. Explaining that's what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm confused by it. So I could see how they would be confused by it.
So I'll walk you through.
Okay.
So first time, you have the first verdict, which is for Joey's injuries, right? To his leg, everything that he's gone through, his medical expenses, the pain and suffering.
No, I get it. I get what you mean now. I just didn't get what you could say or couldn't say to a juror to make it clear.
So in the
this is separate.
In the second trial, I mean, I was constantly, that was like one of the main things that I was focused on was, and really it was Gabe's job more than mine because he was in that space more than me, but every chance I had to remind him, hey, you've got to make this super clear. Like they have to know that this first ask is completely separate from punitive damages. Punitive damages are to punish and deter the bad actor from engaging in similar conduct in the future, right? You're trying to prevent that bad actor to punishment, really, punitive damages. So they understood it 100% the second time. They understood like there's going to be a first ask and we're coming back the second day. If you allow us and you give us that green light, we're coming back the second day and we're asking for a lot more. Suzuki tried it like it was the first case. And we came into it, and this is something that we said.
It's a second chance.
The second time going into this, we kind of had some mantras, and one of them was like, "This is a whole new case. We're not trying this the same way that we tried it the first time." And we made major adjustments, and we tried it very differently than the first time. Even the way that we structured our witnesses, we put them, in order. We were really, really aware of everything in this trial. Not to say that they weren't in the first trial, but I think that we just knew, okay, how to bring the story together in the most, in the most impactful way.
And where did you learn to do that?
Watching the first trial, understanding where the misses were in the first trial. And I think just thinking about like human beings. If you're really excited to meet someone and you hear 4 people tell you little stories about that person before you're going to meet them, and they're all really great stories about this person, how much more excited are you to eventually meet that person, right? Like if you're already like, these jurors are pulled into this courtroom, they know why they're there. They know that they've got, to decide this case on behalf of this guy versus Suzuki Motor Corporation. They understand that they're eventually going to meet this human being. And if you can put these stories together leading up to that testimony from the client, it just like consistently builds that anticipation. So when he walked into the courtroom, you could hear a pin drop. Like all eyes were on him. They were ready to meet this guy. They'd heard all of the most powerful stories from his life. So imagine, you're going to meet someone that you're really excited to meet and you have all these stories.
Is this like a known tactic?
This is something that we just kind of put together. I don't know. Maybe it's known. It works for us.
Is it something you're going to try to implement going forward?
Yeah, I think that I would try to structure it this way. And every case is different.
Right. And
right? But I think that it's a really powerful way to present your client. I think there's so much power in building that story and building that identity so that by the time your client gets up there, the jury's, they're ready. They want to hear the story. So we had the first verdict, which was $11 million for his compensatory damages, all of the pain and the suffering, the medical expenses, past and future, $11 million. And then we came back the second day, and it was like a very fast second little mini trial on the punitive aspect of the case, and that was $150 million in punitive damages. So all in was $161 million.
Was there something like that you guys discovered that they failed to do?
When you start pulling out these documents, you start to see these memos, and you start to see the inner dialogue in this company and what they knew, but that they weren't sharing, it's pretty bad. It's
And
pretty bad.
did you do any like big data or focus groups or anything like that?
We did a focus group. We did a focus group before this, which I think that was where we had that aha moment of
Really?
yes, yeah. Because I remember
What happened?
we brought Joey in and we did a focus group with like 40 fake jurors, whatever you want to call them, and I remember like we put on his damages and we had him talk a lot about his damages. And the consensus from this group was it sounded as if he was complaining. It sounded like he was kind of just whining about his injuries. And he heard all of it because he's in the other room, right? So he's listening to the live feedback.
That must be so
and
tough.
I remember I ran in there. I'm like, don't let this impact you. And he was really good about it. He's like, listen, they don't know me. Like, they don't really know my story. He's like, I'm not, he's like, it sucks, but I'm not taking this to heart.
So the aha moment was, how do we make it so it doesn't sound like a complaint?
The aha moment was, how do we get all of this out there, but not through his voice? Which was, we have to pull this from the damages witnesses. We have to pull this from his sister, his mom, his brother, his girlfriend, right? It has to come from them. And so by the time he gets up there, they've already laid out all of the struggles, and we just took little pieces from each. But they were really, really powerful little stories that exemplified the struggle he had gone through after his crash. So he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to sit up there and share 5 stories talking about how shitty his life was, right? He could just come up, touch on it. And when he touched on it, they already knew what he was talking about.
Right.
Because they already heard the stories.
And I've heard other trial lawyers say this about friends and family being the ones to like tell.
Woe is me. Juries do not want to root for someone who's just feeling sorry for themselves or, feeling like their life has been shattered and they're never going to recover. Juries and human beings naturally want to fight for an underdog. They want to fight for someone who's trying to come back from something really tragic. So I feel like if you can frame your client that way and show how they're fighting back and how they're that underdog that's trying to make the best out of the challenge, people appreciate that. That's why Rocky's still a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, but in a way it makes me feel like, God, we're kind of shitty. Like there's something like
is that shitty though? I mean, I look at it.
But I think it's shitty that they would think like, oh, well, he's just complaining. It's like, well, yeah, what happened sucks. Like that part,
right?
I think we do lack empathy.
I was just going to say, because not everybody has the experiences with empathy.
But what's weird is like, how they say that like the more likely, like the more you have in common with someone, like the less tolerant you are. People
that they feel like, hey, I've been through that same experience. Why is it so hard for you?
But you would think it would be like the opposite.
Like if you have someone who has chronic pain.
Yeah.
And I've had a verdict be affected by. I had a verdict up in Stockton, and one of the jurors said, well, I have chronic back pain. I didn't get to sue for my crash. And he was in a really bad crash and he had really significant injuries.
It's a sense of unfairness. Like if I didn't get this opportunity, you don't get it. And I think that that's really dangerous because you have now a juror that's going to go back and like advocate
potentially
the other
poison,
way.
Poison that well, right?
When my husband was in law school, I did a mock trial and I totally like took people one.
You have that personality.
Oh, it was so much fun. I was like, I should go to law school. This is fun.
That's scary. That's a talent though. But you could use that for good or bad.
Oh, of course.
Obviously, you're using it for good. Law rank. Am I right?
Of course.
Right. But you've got a talent.
But you have people that are like that. Like
that's 100% true.
Eventually, actually, I just wanted to leave and got bored, and I was like, okay, I'm done pushing it. Like we can do whatever you guys want. Just want to go home.
Yeah, you already knew your talent.
Yes,
you knew that you had this superpower.
I mean, I do think I'm one of those people that will speak up and will try to persuade people.
Speak up?
Yes.
Really?
You didn't know this?
I didn't. I would never guess that.
Right? No.
Oh my gosh.
I was so quiet yesterday at dinner. So quiet.
You quiet is still you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're still.
I was being sarcastic. I don't think I was quiet.
Oh, okay.
Although
good.
I was quiet when I was trying
I thought maybe you were because I thought you were saying you were quiet because maybe you're tired or something.
Well, I was quiet when I was trying to think of an embarrassing story that I still can't think of.
You still can't think of an embarrassing story?
Not like a super embarrassing.
I think that here's the problem. I think that you had such an embarrassing story
that
it's so deeply suppressed that you're just not going to be able to pull it.
Really? No, I
Yeah.
need to pull it and deal with it.
I mean, I know mine. I know one of my most embarrassing stories. I told you.
You
You know,
want to
second grade.
You want to tell it to the?
I mean, we don't need
I
to get into the
think-
details, but when you tell a whole class, okay, that kid peed his pants and that kid happens to be me, it's highly embarrassing and that'll stick with you. And I didn't pee my pants for the record, or I want that. Let the record reflect. It was water from whatever camera I'm in. It was water from the bathroom. It was water from
you
the
couldn't
sink.
explain how that water got there.
I think I just cupped my hands and, I don't know. I don't know how it got there, but the point is it got there.
I don't think it was water.
100% it was.
Did you
I
smell
know
it
it
when
was.
you took it off?
I can still go back to the moment. I can still go back to the moment. Danny Espinoza, still one of my best friends, ended up having an incredible Major League Baseball career, actually.
Really?
So he ended up being a, pretty good human being, even though he threw me under the bus in second grade.
I told you what I think happened there. It was like Stockholm syndrome or whatever you call it.
You think that's what drew me to him?
Yeah.
I was already close to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Doesn't
but he
sound like
decided
a
to
good
stab me in the
friend.
back. Judas. Stabbed me in the back.
That's really messed up. I think I'm going to start asking this at the end of
It's a
every
great question.
interview.
What's your most
Embarrassing story?
Second grade, Danny Espinoza running out of the bathroom, telling everyone that I peed my pants.
In front of the girl? No,
In front of the girl I had a crush on.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Rudy, you want to come over here and tell your most embarrassing
Deepest, darkest story?
Did you think of it yet?
No.
See, she hasn't thought of one either.
You haven't thought of one either?
I asked my friend and she's like, none of them are appropriate.
So you
see,
do
I
have
told
some.
you.
She
I
does
told
have
you
some.
she had some really
I
good
knew it.
ones.
I
I
knew
could
it.
tell.
I knew it.
On her face.
Yeah, you could tell she wanted to hold it back.
Yeah, she did tell us a really...
It's gonna hit you one of these days, and when I want to be the first call. Whenever it hits you,
Okay.
I need to be the first call.
Okay, when I call you, you're going to know why.
Oh yeah, I'll know.
Yeah.
I'll know.
Okay. I will keep you posted.
Please do.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This
Like
was
I
fun.
said, I've been
This was more
wanting to be
serious
on
than
here,
I thought it'd be.
but it was good, right?
It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not all of us can just sip whiskey and tell jokes like Bob Simon.
No.
Sometimes you gotta share the real stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to stop name dropping Bob Simon.
Well, he is my boss.
I mean,
he is my. I hate
people
to
get
say
mad
that.
about it. So,
Yeah. They're gonna have to live with it.
Thank you so much to Robbie for everything he shared with us today. If you found this story valuable, please share it with someone you want to see succeed. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to help others discover the show.